Clarise Annette Brooks. And you can see a copy of her book when she comes on the screen, and it's called Excuse Me While I Live My Life. Words to Reach Your Heart. Welcome to Why I Write. Clarise, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm well, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure to have you. It's always fantastic to line up with our guests who do so much work in terms of making sure their creativity is never lost. It's captured.
Yes.
It is captured, it's contained, it's published, because published works, especially for us, people of the African diaspora, once upon a time, we were not allowed to write.
That's right.
Much less read.
That is absolutely
much less
true.
Published.
Mm-hmm.
Our own Marcus Garvey from out of Jamaica, he had a newspaper that was running quite a long time that really was in the business of supporting the education of the Negro during these times. And they didn't stop until they banned that publication. So we're here today to support all writers, no matter your heritage, no matter your genre, because it's not an easy feat putting out a book. So let me begin by saying congratulations to you, Clarise Annette Brooks, for putting out Excuse Me While I Live My Life. How long did it take you from start to finish to get to the publication of this, your first published work?
Well, I'll tell you, Totlin, it's a hard question to answer because I've been writing all my life since childhood. I've loved writing. And there were some poems in this book that I wrote years ago, 10 years before the book was published. But I didn't necessarily write them with the idea of publishing a book. Then when I decided that I was going to publish a book, and I said, you know what, I have a lot of poetry here. When I share the poems with people, I get not just, oh, I like your poem, but I get, this reminds me of this in my life, or this helped me this way or that way. And I said, you know what, I'm going to put it together in a book. And from the point that I decided I was going to write a book to the point that it was published, I'd say it was about maybe a year and a half. All my life, I knew I was a writer. And I went to a school, where they did a lot of work with the students on writing. We were always having an opportunity to write poems or to write stories and to share the stories with the class. And from the time I was in third grade, fourth grade, the students always wanted to hear what Clarise wrote. They were happy when I was up at the front, and I loved sharing it. And they laughed at the right moments. They gasped at the right moments. They spoke with me afterwards. And this is when I was 9 years old. So I always knew that this was something that was going to be a part of my life. I always knew that I had a skill to touch people. I had a skill in this particular art. I felt that was a talent that I enjoyed. And not only that I enjoyed, but that others enjoyed as well. So I always knew that I was a pen and paper person and that I could create something from it. I always had that with me.
Now, you're an educator by profession.
Yes.
And you said you always knew that writing was going to be a part of your life, this writing, this entertaining, this telling of your stories. At any time did it occur to you that you should just go ahead straight into writing and not even explore the business of education?
Well, I'll tell you, I thought that when I retire someday, then I'll really get into writing and I'll get into publishing and whatever. But when I wrote this book, it did very well and it was very well received. And I actually decided to take a little break from education right now after having been in it for over 30 years and loving it. And then I will never abandon it completely, because there will always be things in education that I want to do. But I decided to take a little bit of a hiatus to really work on my craft, kind of while the irons are hot, I think is the saying. And I'm working on my next book right now. I'm doing a lot of open mics, and I've been asked to do a lot of spoken word at particular occasions. I did a wonderful one in New Jersey, Edison, New Jersey this summer for an organization, a wonderful organization called It's Kairos Time. And it's an organization that does wonderful things for children, scholarships for children, workshops for children. It's run by Dr. Lucille Hollis, and she does phenomenal work with them. And she asked me to be actually the poet laureate for the organization for this year, which was an honor for me. And I wrote some original works, just for their celebration. And from that, I met other people who were there who are now saying, oh, can you come and do some work at my church? Can you come to my college? Can you come? So I've been invited to do a number of things now. So you see how one little event leads to, 9 more events.
Exactly. Now, the thing about it is, Clarise, the reason I asked you when it is that you got up one day and decided you want to be an author, and you said it's all the way back when you were 7 years old, 8 years old, and you went through the whole process. The reason I asked you about considering why we didn't consider to go straight into writing right out of high school, right out of college, why didn't we pursue that? The reason I asked this is because so many writers are at first educators, but then you have another set of people. They are authors right off the bat. And the reason why we have this platform, why I write, is because we want to trace the inner journey that brought you to the place where this writing was consistent at 8, 9, 10, 16, 21, 40. So I want us to just take a little journey as we look at what your family background was like. What was the environment like that really fertilize that imagination to bring you into a writer, even at such a young age? So let's start there.
I recall once when I was very small, I mean, I can't even remember the age. I was very small. One of my sisters, I'm one of 7 daughters. My parents had 7 daughters. And one of my older sisters was telling me the story of Romeo and Juliet. And I said, oh, wow, that was a really good story. And then she told me that the story was written hundreds of years ago. And I said, what? You mean you could write a story in your life and then it could still be there hundreds of years from now for people to read and for people to, and that was when I said, wow, this is a really powerful thing. And I think that was the very first time that I realized how much power there is in storytelling and how it lasts through the ages. Something that I write now, or that you write now, or anyone writes now, could be here hundreds of years from now. We could look at, what was this person about? Something that I could write something that will touch someone, in the heart, 400 years from now. That blew me away. I was like, wow. So I said, I kind of like to do that. But, sometimes as you're growing up, you ask me why kind of going to education rather than the writing. Sometimes safety and life kind of get in the way of certain things. I love education. I loved every second of it. I loved working with my students. I helped my students improve their writing tremendously. And I have, stories about that. And so it's not that I did something that I didn't enjoy. I enjoyed it so much that I think at times I kind of put my writing to the side. And then when I made up my mind, I said, you know what, I'm going to do this now. And I did it. I did it hard. And I bear the fruits of it. It was successful. And so, I guess that was that first seed.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. You also have as your heritage, your family is also from the Caribbean.
That's right.
Or the Caribbean, as we say in Jamaica, So how would you say that your heritage impacted your thoughts, your imagination, how you leaned into your creativity? Because, we can tell a good story.
Oh, yes. And you just said it right there. My family is from St. Martin, and it's a beautiful island. I'm very proud that this is my heritage. And you were so right, because there it's storytelling. And I remember being very small, and my father, my uncles, my cousins, everybody, they would tell these stories of things that happened And it was so vivid. And they weren't trying to be storytellers. They were just talking about things that happened, but the way they described things, they had you hanging on end, to hear what this person said, that person said. So yes, the art of storytelling is in, my tradition. And that definitely was another seed that was planted inside of me.
Can you remember outside of the Romeo and Juliet story that was written 100 years ago, hundreds of years ago, which other stories really, really had a tremendous impact on your consciousness that helped shape your writing style and your writing skills?
I loved poetry. I love the work of Langston Hughes, huge, huge influence on me. I love the work of so many of the poets, Claude McKay, Maya Angelou. I mean, almost any poet from the Harlem Renaissance and beyond. I love how something could be captured in a poem so well, not something that has to necessarily be hundreds of pages or even dozens of pages. It could be captured on one page and be so powerful. It could be an anthem to someone. It can be a solace to someone. It could be funny, whatever. So poetry really hit me right away. And I love that. I love the work of Charles Chestnut. I love listening to the narratives of the enslaved people because they told stories, and so many of them are not heard now. But that's something that the first time I really got into a lot of the narratives of those people who had been enslaved, not slaves, but people who had been enslaved, because that's what they were. That's who they were. And was when on a trip to Louisiana that I took, and I found this book in a bookshelf of narratives that had been captured by people who had after the emancipation. So I went to bed I went into my hotel room that night, and that whole night, I didn't even go to sleep. I was just reading these stories, and the way that they were written, and because they wrote them, colloquially, I couldn't go to sleep that night. It was just amazing, the things that they spoke about, so human. And these people were so intelligent, people who someone that time may look at and think they were nothing. They were so intelligent and bright. And this captured, me, and how they could tell so much in just a short amount of space, because some of them were only 2 or 3 pages each, but they were very rich. And that had a deep impact on me as well. And what I liked about it so much was there's a human element that goes through all of us. There's a thread that goes through all of us, and they captured it. So that had a huge influence on me. Any kind of the biblical stories, all of them. I've always been interested in the faiths of people. Those have a big influence on me as well. I love to read them as well. I love to read of the Native American beliefs, huge influence on me, Greek mythology, everything. So I basically, I love to read everything. So I guess that's not as, tight an answer, but those are some of the things, because those are great stories.
Being an English teacher at the outset, you, of course, later became a leader in your district. Being an English teacher, how would you say that our students are currently responding, or have been responding over the years, to the business of literature, to the business of use of English in their own daily lives? Because I think that the use of English, I think literature has a way of enriching your life unlike anything else. What would be your commentary on how our students are responding to those areas?
Children love a good story. They love a good story. And I don't know if all parents realize how important it is to read to children from the time they're in the womb, practically. Yes. So in school, that is sometimes we have to actually take the place of that, because that's not the way it is in all homes. Not all homes do you end the evening with a book, or even storytelling around the table the way that it was when I was growing up. So I really put a strong emphasis on that, in how they learn how to use the spoken word, how to express themselves, how to explain something from all of the different types of literature, fiction, nonfiction, poetry, whatever it was. And some students were, pulled back a little bit. Oh, it's too long. It's going to be too long. When they get into it, they loved it. They absolutely loved it. And it helps to improve their writing, because when you read the way when things are written well, you then learn how to write better yourself. And I would very often have the students do drafts of work. And when they saw what the third draft looked like, they were excited to get to the third draft. At first, they thought it was like a punishment. Oh, I have to do this again. Blah, blah, blah. And no, what we're going to do is you're going to make it sound more like you. You're going to learn how this author did it, how this person did it, and you're going to learn how to do it yourself. By the time they got into the routine of things and they were getting to like maybe the third draft, they were actually very excited about it and saying, I'm going to use alliteration here, miss, to really make the point. I'm using
alliteration. They're
yes,
using by the word. I love it.
yeah, oh yeah. I want it to really sound, I want to really capture the sound. So I'm going to go use some onomatopoeia. And they really got into it then, once it was presented to them that way, that they, when you hold the pen, you have the power. And it's not a punishment to hold the pen. It is power, because you are making the reader read something the way that you want it to be read. And you are in charge of that. So when we got to that point, and I'd say we usually got there, if we started in September, we usually got there about
mid-October,
then they were off. And then they really enjoyed it.
Oh, so, I love that story you just shared. This is a reason I was asking you the questions I was asking earlier in terms of your choice of career path. Is not to take away at all from what you've done in the classroom. Because you see, an excited teacher produces excited students, and especially in the craft of communication.
Yes.
Because once an individual learns how to express his or herself using their own words, they are better able to emote, navigate, negotiate.
Absolutely.
They're better able to communicate with each other.
Writing helps people to think. It organizes your thoughts.
Yes.
And it helps you to think. And it helps you to listen more critically when it's taught to you well. It's very powerful.
It is very powerful. It helps you to analyze very well. It helps you with critical thinking. It helps in assimilation of information. Absolutely. It helps with the whole business of being able to use the information in a very positive way. So,
and that's why I get very sad anytime I hear someone say to try to punish a child by making them read or by writing. That hurts my heart. Reading, writing should never be part of a punishment for a child, because that goes in their heads that, I'll tell you something. I was at a barbecue once, and a little boy, I don't know, he was acting up and he was being silly, and he knocked something over. And
he was being himself. He was being a child.
Exactly. And he knocked something over, and his dad got mad at him, and he said, all right, I'm gonna show you. You go, enough of this barbecue for you. You go upstairs and you read a book. That'll fix you. And I was like, oh my God, I was just sitting there. I was like, oh no, what is happening with this child? So about, I don't know, an hour and a half later, he came back. And so I made a point, and I don't even know the child very well. I was a guest at this home. And so I said to him, so what did you choose to read? And, and he was telling me about a little story about a little boy detective. And I said, did you guess the end? Did you, and, could you go get the book and show me? Oh, because I didn't want that experience to end with having to hold the book as a punishment. Never. It's a gift. It's a great thing. So if there's any message I could really get across here, it's reading, write, never a punishment, never.
Not at all. Not in this day and age. Unfortunately,
it's a privilege.
Yes. Unfortunately, his dad probably is only, repeating what was told to him.
Yes.
And there's a lot of relearning we have to do as a people.
Yes.
Whether you're of color or not of color, There's
Mhm.
a lot of relearning that we have to do, which is what brings me to the point of always having these conversations
Mhm.
with our authors or writers about the importance of writing.
Yeah.
So important. And to go the next step to indeed publish your work.
Now,
Now, before we got live, Clarice, you told me that you had sent your book off to somewhere, to a
yes,
publisher.
yes,
I want to hear some of the challenges you faced,
yes,
publishing this work. And
yes,
then I want you to go into explaining how you managed to market your book. And then we're going to
absolutely.
hear, yes, Fred, we're going to hear some wonderful pieces of work from Clarice.
Okay. Well, when I decided to, publish it and everything, I was looking for some different publishers, and I went to the bookstores and I looked for books that was similar to mine because I thought, well, okay, this is the kind of book that they publish. Perhaps I'll have success here. And I sent it to a publisher, and I got a rejection letter. And I knew I said, all right, I don't want to waste time sending, and then being rejected. In this day and age, it is very easy to self-publish. And I said, I'm going to go that route. I'm going to do that. I'm going to go the route of self-publishing. And I got everything together, and I tried to get it on Amazon well, but because of the way some of the poems in my book are written, they're not all straight, to the margin. Some, go in. There's one that is shaped like a ladder. So it was kind of going all over the place. So it was getting to be a little frustrating. So I kind of did a hybrid, and I hired someone to work, with it, and it was Stillwater River Publishing here in Rhode Island, and they did a phenomenal job with the book. It came out absolutely beautiful. And so I knew that the book was going to be coming out. And I said, okay, I have to get it noticed somehow, because otherwise it's just going to end up on my shelf and I'm going to end up giving it away as gifts to friends and family at Christmas. So what I did was, well before I knew the book was coming out, I created a Facebook page for myself, Clarise Annette Brooks -author, and I connected it to my other Facebook page, and so that everybody could see. I made videos of some of the poems that were in the book that were going to be coming out. I set it so that it could go to different places in the world. And then another thing that I did was I signed up for every single open mic that I could possibly attend. I was sometimes doing 3 or 4 per week in my state, in the state of Rhode Island, in Massachusetts, in Connecticut, in New Jersey. I was signing up for every single one that I could get to. In 1 month, I must have done maybe 25. I also looked at what were online, because that was still, we were coming out of the pandemic then, and there was still some places that were doing online spoken open mic spoken word. So I did those as well. And by the time the book came out, I had such an audience, a tremendous number of people that were now following me. And then I said, okay, the book is coming out Monday. And, it came out and it did so well. It opened up, it was released and opened up on Amazon in the area, in the category of Black and African American poetry, in the #1 spot. The paperback was #1. The Kindle version was #4, and the hardcover opened at #7 the following week. So I was at #1, #4, and #7 with the book. I could not believe it. I remember the night that I saw it, I was like, is this a mistake? What is going on? And people started calling me, Clarice, your book is #1. It was fantastic. I took pictures of it, screenshots, everything, and I, put it on my Facebook page.
Yes.
And then I looked at the book that was #3, when mine was #1, 4, and the next one 7. The book that was at #3 was from the company that had been published by the publishing company that had rejected me.
What
Yes,
sweet revenge.
yes, yes. So it was a lot of work. And this fabulous company was doing a tremendous amount of work around that writer. And they got to #3, and I was doing a tremendous amount of work, and I got to #1. So I had all 3 versions were in the top 10. The
Yes.
paperback, the Kindle, and the hardcover. And hardcovers are hard to get into top 10 because most people don't buy hardcovers anymore. So that, really went to show you. And, it just goes to show you, we are in a time when no one can stop you. Okay. There was a time when people who looked at me like me were stopped from being able to read.
Yes.
Okay. If I was found writing, I would have been punished.
Hands, fingers chopped off. Yes.
Absolutely. I would have been punished. So right there shows you that with the work that you want to do, if you're going to do it, you can do it, and you can even, I don't want to say beat a large publishing company, but they didn't come in first like I did that week. Okay. So I was doing something right. Okay. I did it, and it was a lot of work, but I had fun. I had fun with the open mics and the spoken word. And sometimes people in Rhode Island stop up to me and say, "Oh, aren't you the poet? I see your videos," because I send them, on the Facebook and Instagram and all these other new ones that they have now that my daughter tells me to join. So, it's there. You can do it. You can absolutely do it.
Well, heartiest congratulations again.
Thank
And
you.
I believe, when did the book come out? What time last year?
It came out in March of 2022.
March of 2022. So I would have reached out to you a month after that. So the fact that I saw it to reach out to you means that the job was done. The job was done. All of the hard work you put in. And again, this is, Clarise, why we have these conversations. We have these conversations to tell our stories so that folks can be very, very encouraged.
Yes.
Very encouraged to tell their stories. In my walk-a-day life, I come across so many people who say, yeah, I want to write a book, but no, there's no but. Like you just said, there is nothing to stop you now.
That's right. And so I really hope that story encourages every single person who's listening. I am a huge believer in people of the craft supporting each other and helping each other. So if there's anything that I said there that it motivates anyone, I am very happy. I believe in it. I was on another show and I showed them this picture behind me right here. I will show you. This is a picture of me with someone. I don't know if you can see his face.
Oh, James Baldwin.
That's James Baldwin.
Wow.
And that's me. I won't even say how many years ago.
That was just like yesterday.
Thank you.
25.
This is when I had just graduated college. And my mother, she treated my sister and me. My sister had graduated the same year. And she treated us to a trip to London, and we went to London. And that meant a lot to me because she organized that for us as a special gift, and it was great. We went to see a play while we were there called The Amen Corner. And that's another one of his plays that I love. I love so much of James Baldwin. And during intermission, we were talking, and we turned and said, "Oh my God, it's James Baldwin." He was in the back of the auditorium, just standing there. And I said, "Oh my God," I said, "I'm gonna go talk to him." But I was wondering if he was going to talk with me because it's James Baldwin, and I'm I was a college student, So I just went up to him and I said, "Good evening, Mr. Baldwin." And he said, "Oh, hello." And he asked me my name, and he spoke to me. And for the intermission was about maybe 20 minutes. And for the entire 20 minutes, he spoke with me, and he asked me like what I was interested in and what I studied in college and what I wanted to do. And he spoke a little about himself. James Baldwin,
It was an amazing experience.
He was wonderful. And for him to take the time to talk to me a little bit about himself getting started and, how he, redid stories over and over again to try to get it right. He didn't have to take the time to do it, but he did. And he was very encouraging to me. So that's the thread continues. And anything that I said, I'm not comparing myself to James Baldwin, but anything that I said that could be encouraging to anyone who wants to get their work out, I hope that it is beneficial to them. I really.
That's a beautiful story.
I
Oh, I'm
do.
having goosebumps right now. I've met someone whom has spoken, not just met, spoken with James
Yes.
Baldwin. 6 degrees of separation. I love this. Oh, yes. Can you recall, Clarice, over the past year since your book has met with such success? What particular experience or feedback that still stays with you to today?
Well, people have favorite poems from the book. One of my very, very dear friends went through a medical issue, a very serious medical issue. And one of the poems in the book called Climb was one of the one of the poems that she turned to when, as she was going through this. She's in a much better place now. She's doing much better and well, and she's still, when I see her sometimes, she still asks me to read that poem to her. They just mean certain things to certain people. A couple of the poems are poems that came from motherhood. I have 2 children. My daughter Alexa is 23 and my son Daniel is 19. And when I would take time to talk with them, sometimes afterwards when I was thinking about it and I would sit down with a pen and paper, the things that I said to them just came out as a poem. And so those are in here as well. And I've had other parents stop and tell me, when I read that, I got copies of your book for my children, and that's very powerful to me, because for a parent to come up to you and say, I want to put your words into my child's mind, that is very, very powerful.
Yes.
And to go out of the way to go and buy extra copies of the books and talk over the phone if their child lives away. There's one whose 2 daughters live in different cities right now. One's in college and one is somewhere else. I forgot. They read one of the poems and then they talk about it on the phone. And she told me, oh yeah, we do that every other Sunday. And I'm like, wow, that is really powerful. So anyone telling me this poem, one told me that, one of the poems to her is like a prayer. And she says her prayers and she also reads that poem that I wrote. Those are the powerful things that are like, oh my God. And when you're writing, you don't expect it. I'm not writing it for that to happen. But when people come and tell me that happens, it just goes again. Like I said, I'm going to use this word again, powerful. The pen and paper are powerful. Yes. And so, so those are some of the
pen is
things.
mightier than the sword. And if you don't use
Yes.
a pen,
Yes.
the typewriter keyboard or your computer keyboard.
Absolutely. I'm gonna, with you just saying that right there, if you don't mind, can I read one of the poems that just reflects what you just said a little bit?
Go ahead, because I want to come back and ask you something else about the book. So go right ahead, because I know people like Fred and Faith and Terethia and so many of you can't wait to hear the words from Clarice Annette.
So this one is called Send Me the Words of Peace. I have heard it said that words can start a war. Words said within steps of you can wound someone afar. They can send young soldiers off to war to be totally devoured. They can ruin what is most sacred in this world of ours. Words, just simple letters intertwined that can hold tremendous meaning when combined. They can have invincible power when written upon the lines and can freeze us in our tracks when blared across headlines. But is it possible that words can take us to a different place? One where humanity will not be displaced? A place where animosity can finally be replaced? A place where our differences can finally be embraced? Can we somehow create a time with one another where there's finally no more harm to our sisters and our brothers? A time with no more broken fathers and no more crying mothers, just respect that is expressed for one another. Send me the words to soothe our soul that will conjure peace for young and old. I want the words that when they are told will allow a calmness to unfold. I will not even add my name. I am not seeking any fame. It is not for me to be acclaimed. I want only for the words to be proclaimed. So please, I sit here with my simple pen and pray for those words to finally be sent. I'll write each one down, you see, and then release them to the world as I say, amen. So the power of words.
I am telling you, words can heal and words can start a war.
Right.
And as writers, as creators, we do have the tools in our hands to use wisely.
Yes.
Yes, indeed, we do. I love the cover of your book. Excuse me while I live my life. Tell me the backstory to your cover.
Well,
it looks like you.
you know, I when I was growing up, as we were growing up, there were not many books that had covers with people who looked like us. There were not many characters in the books who looked like us that were always described in a powerful light, and in a positive light, I should say. And I wanted to capture on the cover of the book someone who looked as close to me as possible. Even when, even on my personal Facebook page, every Sunday I put out a blessing to everyone. Every Sunday, if you are on my personal Facebook page, not the author one, but the personal one, I send out a blessing to everyone. And there is a picture of a woman, and the woman looks like me. She is a woman of color. She is a woman who looks like me. And I purposely choose that because I want to acknowledge the fact that when I was growing up, this did not exist. It did not exist. And if it did, it was usually a book that you didn't want to pick up because it was something horrible happened to someone. I live a life of joy. I have joy in my life. I've been blessed with a family that's very encouraging. I have 2 wonderful children, and I have great blessings and joy in my life. And the covers are of women of color who, there's joy. There is love and there's joy in this book, as it says, words to reach your heart. So when I saw this cover, and I got this cover from an online company that you can get covers from, book covers from. It's called Self Pub Book Covers, Self Pub Book Covers. And you can go there and you could type in something in a search and all different, you'll get hundreds and hundreds of choices. And when I saw this one, right away, I chose it. And I chose that for the cover of my book. So I recommend it to everyone.
I particularly love the title, Excuse Me While I Live My Life. I'm going to ask you how you come up with that title, but not before I read one that I love.
Yes, please do.
Far. And what I like about reading a poetry book such as this is that every time you pick up a book like this, something else resonates with you. And you can pick up a book and you've read the poems before. But on a particular day, you read one and it just fits, like this one.
Yes.
It's entitled My Soul is Planted. In certain ways, I don't mind floating, just like the leaves in fall. In other words, I will not acquiesce. No, sir, not at all. You see, on certain things, I can bend without feeling at all dismantled. But on things that matter most to me, on these, my soul is planted. Some say that I'm calm. They even say I can seem cool. I never scream and get all loud or act like some damn fool. I will not disarray myself. You won't see me getting frantic because I'm telling you, my dear, this soul of mine is planted. Now, I enjoy my fun and my little sip at happy time, but don't worry. I don't worry about trends or if I'm thin, because I feel just fine.
Man.
I dress up in my duds and my fine hat that I wear slanted, and I'm fine with whoever looks at me because my soul is planted. I respect that you have your ways. I'm not asking you to change. You like your things. This I acknowledge, even if I find them strange. And if you're with me, understand this. Don't approach me heavy-handed. I'll speak up for myself. I know who I am because my soul is planted. Yeah, we can still talk and share our thoughts. We can even be real candid, but just remember, I ain't trying to change you and you won't change me because my soul is planted. I love it.
Have you read that one from now on? You read it better than I do. I love it. I love the way you did that.
I love it. I love it.
That
And
is
the next poem that follows after that is Being with Me. I'll begin with me. Love it.
Yes, that's a long one, but it is one of my favorites, and it's one that I am asked to read very, very often. So
Nice. Tell me why you named the book Excuse Me While I Live My Life.
you know, everybody always has something to say. Everybody always has something to say about somebody else's life. And it comes from concern, it comes from love very often. But I think that sometimes what happens is people sometimes even just butt in a little bit so much that where life had the opportunity to take us, we become swamped with other people's opinions and other people's expectations, and that we don't tend to think about what we could have been. Or how much of our lives do we spend doing what other people expect us to do rather than listening to your spirit and wanting to do something? And also fear comes in. And I always spoke with my children about fear. As a matter of fact, there's a poem in my book called Fear is Your Friend. It's another very long one. But I always tell my children, fear is natural. It is not something, when you hear somebody say, don't be afraid, you can't listen to that. You can't tell someone, don't be afraid, because fear is a natural feeling. It's like something very tragic happening and telling someone, don't be sad. How can you tell someone, don't be sad, if something happened to cause them to be sad? Or if something funny happened, how can you tell someone, don't laugh? If it's something that was, humorous. So fear is natural. But the thing is, when fear comes into your life, you have to think about the place that it has in your life. And I used to tell my two children, Alexa and Daniel, and I still tell them, when fear arises, you have a choice of three things to do. One, you can put the fear in front of you. And if you put that fear in front of you, it will block you from moving forward because you're afraid, what if this, what if that? It's new, I'll have to do something I haven't done before, and I'm frightened by that. And so, I'm going to put the fear in front of me and I'm not going to move forward. And then you end up staying stuck where you are. The second choice that you have is to take the fear and just throw it behind you. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm just going to go into this. And then what happens, you enter into things carelessly. You may enter into buying a home that is really too expensive, that you should not have purchased because the mortgage was too high. But you just threw the, caution you just threw it away and didn't think about it and say, yeah, and then you're bogged up in debt up to your neck, or you just enter some kind of
eye teeth in the Caribbean.
What's that?
In debt up to your eye teeth.
Oh, yes. And and you enter into things foolishly without really starting to think.
Yes.
Or you can do the third option, which is what I tell my children to do. Take fear by the hand. Let it whisper. What is it that's scary about this? Okay. I'm scared because I'm wondering if I'm prepared. Am I prepared to buy the house at that price? So you know what? Let me sit down. If I need to sit down with an accountant, if I need to sit down and look at, you know what? That one is too expensive, but this one is fine. Or what college should I go to? Oh yeah, I'm gonna go to a college across the country. Well, let's sit down and think about that. When you get homesick, what's going to happen? If you this, maybe you're going to go to college, or maybe that college is too expensive. Let's sit down and plan. So fear is telling you to take a moment, think, plan. Now, what should you do? And when
you need to read the first two verses of that piece.
Yes. And so when you let me find it here, because I didn't have it as one of the poems I was going to read. Here it is.
Page 4.
There you go. Thank you. Fear is your friend. Listen not to those who say, ignore fear. They do not understand. You must realize that fear is your friend. But when she comes to visit, remember her place in your life. Do not place fear in front of you. To do so is to misunderstand her intention. She will block you from moving forward into the adventures your life may hold. She will be the barrier, and you, her unintended captive, unable to move, unable to go forward, trapped, forever remaining in your place. And your life's closing will be one of regrets and wonderings of what could have been. Do not toss fear carelessly behind you. She resents being ignored. She will shake her head as you fail to give your endeavors the careful thought and planning that they require. She will stare down at the recklessness caused by your disregard for her cautionary warnings. And your final reflections will be of torment and lamentations of how you could have triumphed at the opportunity that once lay before you, and of berating yourself for so foolishly tossing her to the side, dishonoring her purpose.
And you're not going to finish the poem, because to hear the rest of the poem, you got to grab a copy.
There you go.
You got to grab a copy of Excuse Me While I Live My Life. Before we tell you where you can find these copies to grab, I need to hear the other selections that you wanted to share with us this evening before we wrap tonight. And what this sounds like to me, which I am so loving and in love with, is the teaching lessons that you present us in this poetry collection. I love this. The sayings of wisdoms. I've never heard such a fine treatise.
Thank you.
On the item of fear. That's the best I've heard all my entire life.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I love it, because everything you say about it is true. So this is a teaching book, guys and ladies, a teaching book that brings wisdom, not just entertainment, but also invites reflection. What are some of the other pieces of poetry that you had picked out that you wanted to share with us on why I write?
Well, this one is called Boxed, and it's about, it reflects what I was saying just now. I'll read it and then the purpose will come apparent to everyone. Boxed. Did you know your world was open when you first arrived? The possibilities were endless. So many reasons yet to thrive. But someone said, stop now, get back inside your box. Remain where it is known and safe. That's when your mind began to lock. You stayed right there and you watched while others lived out their dreams, while you believed the lie that only they were born for great things. And when you questioned, you were told, hush now, don't talk silly. That life's not for you or me. Just strive for normalcy. So you asked once more and you were told again, stop talking like a fool. You can't do those kinds of things. They ain't for me or you. So there you stayed and you remained, believing the common lie that keeps you locked inside your box that is now locked from the inside.
When you perform that one, you must get so much applause.
Yes, that is the one that I am asked to read a lot. And that actually is one that a number of parents have told me that they have shared with their children, and they read with their children sometimes. So that meant a great deal to me that they do that.
Awesome. I have a question here from one member of our audience, Fred, who is also an educator par excellence himself in Canada. Fred is asking, is there a particular reason for the gender you chose for fear?
You know, perhaps because that is something that I always used to share with my children. So it's kind of my voice. And being a woman, I made I personified it. I personified fear as a woman when I said she. So probably because it's just reflective of the way that I speak with my children.
That's awesome. And here's a lady, Deb Mullen. Hi, Deb, who is from Rhode Island that I spoke of earlier. Good to see you online with us, Deb, because our guest here, Clarise, is in Rhode Island as we speak. Now, you grew up in Queens, New York, and how did that influence your writing and your interest in all things literature?
Well, I can't say that it was more in the town I grew up in than anywhere else, but I will say that there are libraries all over Queens. As a matter of fact, I was told once that you could not go more than 1 mile without, there's no library that is more than a mile from another. So I was told that. I'm imagining it's true. So I just love the libraries in Queens when I was growing up. I could spend a whole day in the library
And your
just
whole summer reading in the
yes, yes. And there were times, like my mother always made it a big deal. Like usually on Wednesdays, we would go to the library because she had that day off of work, and all my sisters would go. And one of my sisters was working on a report, and one was doing research over there, and one was working on a project with some of her classmates. I remember sometimes getting a book. I was in the second, third grade, and I would read that book from cover to cover. And it was a chapter book, not just a one scene book, a book with maybe, 12, 14 chapters. And I just read the whole thing and I loved it. So
devoured it.
yes. So I would say growing up, Queens, New York did beautifully with making sure that there were public libraries everywhere, lots of different events for children in the libraries. And I like to think that that's everywhere. I can only speak about Queens, because that's where I grew up. So that's what I was used to. But I'd like to think that that's what it is for all children, and very exciting and comforting way to grow up with the libraries.
I believe so. I agree with you. I spent so many of my lunch hours in our school library back home, and it was the most enriching hour. And we had some great teachers too during the course of today. It's coming to be that time where we have to bid Clarise good night, goodbye, just for a short time, but not before, Clarise, you tell us where to find you, where to find your books, how to connect with you, and how to continue to share this experience of, excuse me, while I live my life.
I'm very happy to do that. Well, a couple of things I will say. One is that my book was recently entered into the world catalog of libraries. So you can actually, which means that it has a number assigned to it, and you can go into any library and you can ask for it. So the libraries that I loved so much, it's now in there. So that is a blessing, to me. The libraries were such a great place to me growing up, and now I have a book there. Also, you can order it on Amazon or any other place where you order books online. You can order my book. And if you want to keep up with what I'm doing and what kind of things I'm working on, you can go to my Facebook page, Clarise Annette Brooks _author. And you can see whatever working on there. And so that's how you can stay in touch.
This is a phenomenal experience, again, on why I write. Another one of our writers is saying, using poetry to teach life lessons and gems of wisdom. I love that. Canute did a wonderful book of poetry that came out of his experience in the pandemic. And again, we're able to heal our nation, ourselves, just through writing and expressing our thoughts.
Mhm.
It really has been such a tremendous experience discussing with you the background to Excuse Me While I Live My Life. It's exciting the way you put your work into marketing your book. It is
Yes,
exciting that you
it's a
interact
lot of
with
fun.
Yes, I love it. I love the fun you're having. And I love the fact that you came to be our first guest as we entered our third season here
What
of
an
Why
honor for
I
me.
Write.
It was an honor for me. Thank you so much, Totlin. This is fabulous. I loved it. I had so much. I can't believe the hour's gone by already. I feel like it's
I
only been,
know already.
you know,
But you know what? We'll be together again
I
because
hope so.
we do plan this season to do more poetry shows and
Right.
readings so that we'll be having multiple authors on, especially after we have introduced them in their own slot like this. We're looking forward to panel discussions and some workshops in the near
I'll be
future. Yes, so congratulations once more, Clarice. It has been my pleasure sharing your work with our community far and wide. And we're looking forward to chatting with you again soon. All
I'll
the
be
best.
Thank you so much, Totlin. Thank you. This is beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And this is Totlin signing out from Why I Write. Have a great week.